Today, we're diving into the dynamics between Iran's proxy forces and the recent U.S. strikes on Iran. It's a topic that's got a lot of people scratching their heads.
Absolutely. Especially since, according to recent reports, Iran's proxies have been loud in support, but pretty quiet in terms of actual retaliation.
That's what stood out to me. Publicly, these groups express strong solidarity with Iran. But when it comes to real action on the ground, there's been restraint. Why do you think that is?
There's a lot to unpack. One big reason could be that direct engagement with U.S. forces carries massive risks. Retaliating could provoke even harsher responses.
Right. And I think there's also a sense of strategic patience. They might want to avoid giving the U.S. an excuse to escalate. It's like a chess game. Sometimes the best move is not to move at all.
I like that analogy. Plus, these proxy forces operate in countries facing their own instability. Launching attacks could backfire politically in places like Iraq or Syria.
Good point. There's also the question of how much autonomy these proxies really have. Sure, they're aligned with Iran, but they have their own interests too.
Exactly. They're not just puppets. Sometimes their goals overlap with Tehran's, but not always. That complexity shapes their response.
And let's not forget the messaging aspect. Even if they're not acting militarily, issuing statements of support can still rally their base and keep up appearances.
For sure. Sometimes words can be as powerful as weapons, especially in the information war. But do you think this approach risks eroding their credibility?
That's interesting. If supporters expect action and don't see it, there might be frustration. But on the flip side, avoiding direct conflict may preserve their strength for the long haul.
There's also the regional picture. If these groups act too aggressively, it could drag neighboring countries into wider conflict. No one wants that.
It's like walking a tightrope. They want to show loyalty, but not trigger a disaster. I can't help but think about how this cycle has repeated over and over in the region.
And yet, every time, there are new variables. The U.S. posture changes, Iran's calculations shift, and local politics play a huge role.
Speaking of politics, do you think domestic pressure in Iran influences how much they encourage proxies to act?
I'd say yes. The Iranian government has to balance showing resolve with not provoking a war it can't control. Sometimes restraint is the most strategic message.
It almost reminds me of the Cold War, where proxy conflicts were a way to avoid direct superpower confrontation. Here, too, it's about indirect leverage.
Great comparison. And proxies allow Iran plausible deniability. If a group acts, Iran can always claim, "It wasn't us." That muddies the waters for the U.S.
But does that deniability really hold up anymore? I feel like everyone knows the connections, even if they're not always overt.
True, but in international relations, even a thin veil can be useful. It gives both sides wiggle room to step back if things get too heated.
So, what do you think is the endgame for these groups? Are they just waiting for the right moment to act, or is this restraint the new normal?
Maybe a bit of both. If circumstances change, say if there's a major provocation, they might escalate. Otherwise, this cycle of statements without action could continue.
And in a way, that ambiguity keeps everyone guessing. Neither side wants to tip their hand too early.
It's almost like a high-stakes poker game. Show just enough to keep the other side nervous, but don't go all in unless you have to.
I wonder how ordinary people in these regions feel about all this. Do you think there's fatigue with these constant threats and counter-threats?
Absolutely. For many civilians, it must feel like living under a perpetual cloud. The uncertainty can be just as damaging as any actual conflict.
That's often overlooked. For leaders and strategists, it's a game of moves. But for families on the ground, it's daily anxiety.
And yet, these proxies often justify their existence as protectors of their communities. It's a complicated narrative.
Maybe that's why the public support statements are so important. They're not just for foreign audiences, but to reassure their own people.
That's a great point. Internal morale matters as much as sending a signal to the U.S. or Iran.
Stepping back, do you think this strategy of restrained support could last? Or is it just a matter of time before something sparks a new round of violence?
Hard to say. The region's history suggests that even prolonged lulls can be shattered by a single event. But for now, caution seems to be winning.
It's a bit like waiting for the next storm. You never know when or where it'll hit, but everyone senses the tension.
And while analysts speculate, the real decisions are being made behind closed doors, with a lot of unknowns.
I guess the lesson here is that what's not happening can be just as significant as what is. Silence, in this case, speaks volumes.
Absolutely. Sometimes inaction is a statement in itself. It's a reminder that in geopolitics, patience can be a powerful tool.
So, as we wrap up, maybe the question to ponder is, how long can this balance hold? At what point does restraint become vulnerability?
Or maybe, when does restraint become strength? It's a paradox that keeps this region, and the rest of us, watching closely.
Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious and keep questioning the headlines.
We'll see you in the next episode.